Professor Krelzak's six-fingered hand shook as he carefully extracted the sealed vial from his transport case, the blue-tinted liquid inside seeming to glow under the bright lights of the classroom. The renowned xenobiologist from Centauri Prime had traveled 17 light years to teach a special course at the newly established Interspecies Academy of Sciences on Earth. And today was the moment he'd been anticipating for months. "Students, approach with caution," he warned, his translator converting his native clicks and whistles into smooth English. "What I hold before you is among the deadliest compounds known in the 7 systems." 23 students representing 12 different species leaned forward in their seats. Only 5 humans were enrolled in this advanced xenobiology course, a fact that still pleased Professor Krelzak. Earth had only recently been invited to join the Galactic Council after developing faster-than-light travel, and the professor believed strongly in fostering interspecies scientific cooperation. Zachary Daniels, one of the human students, raised his hand. Unlike his alien classmates who maintained a respectful distance, Zach seemed oddly relaxed. "Yes, Student Daniels," Professor Krelzak acknowledged, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Professor, is that cinnamon?" The classroom fell silent. Professor Krelzak's skin shifted from its normal purplish hue to a pale lavender, a sign of confusion among Centaurians. "I beg your pardon, Student Daniels," Zach pointed at the vial. "That looks exactly like cinnamon extract. We use it in cooking all the time. My mom puts it in cookies." Professor Krelzak's translator emitted a high-pitched whine as he attempted to process what he'd just heard. The compound in the vial Cinnamaldehyde X, as it was classified in galactic scientific literature, was responsible for decimating an entire colony on Proxima b when a cargo ship carrying it had crashed. The incident had led to strict regulations on its transport and handling. "Student Daniels, perhaps you are mistaken. This substance, Cinnamaldehyde X, contains molecular chains that bind to neural receptors in most known sentient species, causing rapid cellular breakdown and organ failure. A single drop can kill a Rigelian sand beast in under 3 minutes." Zach shook his head and reached into his backpack, pulling out a small thermos. "I brought cinnamon coffee this morning. It looks just like that." The alien students gasped and moved away from Zach. A vegan student's protective membranes immediately covered its breathing orifices, while a pair of andromedans ducked under their desks. Professor Krelzak raised all 4 of his arms. "Everyone remain calm. Student Daniels, please secure that container immediately." "But it's just coffee with cinnamon," Zach protested, confused by the reaction. "Look, I can prove it's harmless." Before anyone could stop him, he unscrewed the thermos and took a long sip. Professor Krelzak lunged forward with surprising speed for his bulky frame, knocking the thermos from Zach's hand. Coffee splashed across the floor, causing several alien students to scramble onto their desks in panic. Emergency protocols. Professor Krelzak shouted, his translator barely keeping up with his agitated speech. Classroom lockdown, red lights began flashing as the Academy's security system activated. Airtight seals engaged around the room's doors and windows. "Professor, I don't understand," Zach said, looking genuinely confused. "Cinnamon is just a spice on Earth. We eat it all the time." Professor Krelzak stared at Zach, waiting for the human to collapse, convulse, or show any of the typical signs of Cinnamaldehyde X poisoning. But Zach remained standing, perfectly healthy if somewhat bewildered. "Impossible," Professor Krelzak muttered. He activated his personal scanner and waved it over the spilled coffee. The device beeped urgently, confirming the presence of Cinnamaldehyde X. "You consumed the toxin," Professor Krelzak said slowly, "yet you show no symptoms." "Because it's not toxic to humans," Zach explained. "We've been using cinnamon for thousands of years. It comes from tree bark." Professor Krelzak's scientific mind raced. Could humans be immune to one of the deadliest compounds in the galaxy? The implications were staggering. The classroom door slid open as the Academy's emergency response team arrived, dressed in full hazmat suits. Leading them was Director Harrington, the human administrator who oversaw the Academy. "What's the situation, Professor?" Harrington demanded, his voice muffled through his protective mask. "Director," Professor Krelzak began, still watching Zach for any delayed reaction, "we may have made an extraordinary discovery. Student Daniels has ingested Cinnamaldehyde X and shows no adverse effects." "He what?" Harrington looked at Zach, who shrugged. "I just drank some cinnamon coffee, sir." "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Director Harrington lifted his mask, sniffed the air, and then began to laugh. "Professor, that's definitely cinnamon. It's a common spice here on Earth." "But my scanner confirms it contains the same molecular structure as Cinnamaldehyde X," Professor Krelzak insisted. "Interesting," Harrington said, his laughter subsiding. "Perhaps what's deadly to other species is perfectly safe for humans. Wouldn't be the first time." Professor Krelzak's scientific curiosity overcame his initial alarm. "This requires immediate study. Student Daniels, would you be willing to participate in a controlled experiment?" Zach nodded, intrigued by the situation. "Sure, Professor, but can I ask something first?" "Proceed." "If cinnamon is so deadly to other species, why did you bring it to a classroom full of aliens?" Professor Krelzak's color deepened to a rich purple embarrassment. "It was contained in a triple-sealed security vial designed to withstand planetary impact. I never intended to open it." The demonstration was merely to show the proper handling protocols for Class X toxins. "Well," Director Harrington said, "I think we need to evacuate the non-human students and staff from this wing until we can fully decontaminate. And Professor, I believe you and Mr. Daniels should report to the medical bay for some tests." As the alien students were escorted out, many giving Zach looks that mixed fear with newfound respect, Professor Krelzak carefully secured his vial of Cinnamaldehyde X back in its case. "Student Daniels," he said, "you may have inadvertently initiated a major breakthrough in xenobiology if humans are immune to Cinnamaldehyde X." "It's just cinnamon, Professor," Zach repeated, but he was beginning to understand the significance. "Yes," Professor Krelzak agreed, "you're cinnamon. A common spice to you, a deadly neurotoxin to most of the galaxy." In the medical bay, Dr. Voss, the Academy's chief medical officer, performed a battery of tests on both Zach and Professor Krelzak. The Centaurian professor insisted on wearing a protective suit while in the same room as the open samples of cinnamon. "Fascinating," Dr. Voss said, examining the results on her tablet. "The molecular structure is indeed identical to Cinnamaldehyde X, but Zach's body processes it differently. Instead of binding to neural receptors, his human physiology seems to metabolize it as a simple organic compound." "Is there any danger to him at all?" Professor Krelzak asked. "None that I can detect," Dr. Voss replied. "In fact, according to Earth's medical database, cinnamon has some mild health benefits for humans' anti-inflammatory properties, antioxidants, that sort of thing." Zach couldn't help but smile. "So my deadly morning coffee is actually good for me." "It appears so," Dr. Voss confirmed. "Though I wouldn't recommend consuming it around your alien classmates. We've already had to treat 3 students for anxiety attacks just from potential exposure." Professor Krelzak's mind was racing with the implications. This could revolutionize our understanding of cross-species biochemistry. If humans can safely handle Cinnamaldehyde X, they could potentially aid in research that has been stalled for decades due to the extreme danger to researchers. Or, Director Harrington suggested, having joined them in the medical bay, it could make Earth an important trading partner for medicinal compounds derived from cinnamon that are too dangerous for other species to produce. Trading partner, Professor Krelzak's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Director Harrington, you don't understand. Cinnamaldehyde X is strictly controlled throughout the galaxy. The Proxima incident resulted in over 10,000 deaths. And yet we humans put it in apple pie, Harrington said with a slight smile. Over the next few days, news of the cinnamon incident spread throughout the Academy and beyond. The Galactic Science Council requested immediate access to the research, and overnight, Zach found himself at the center of an interstellar scientific storm. Professor Krelzak converted his classroom into a temporary research lab, with appropriate safety measures for his alien assistants. Zach agreed to provide samples and participate in controlled experiments, fascinated by the opportunity to contribute to galactic science. The implications extend far beyond cinnamon, Professor Krelzak explained as they worked. If humans have evolved immunity to Cinnamaldehyde X, what other compounds considered universally toxic might be harmless to your species? And conversely, what Earth substances might be deadly to other species, like chocolate and dogs, Zach mused. It's toxic to them but fine for us. Precisely, Professor Krelzak said, biochemical compatibility is rarely universal. But this particular discovery is significant because Cinnamaldehyde X has valuable medical applications if it could be safely handled and processed. A week into their research, the lab received a visitor ambassador Thela from the Galactic Council. The tall, willowy figure moved with unsettling grace as she inspected their work. Professor Krelzak, she said, her voice melodic through her translator, the Council is deeply concerned about your research. Cinnamaldehyde X is classified as a restricted substance under the Proxima Accords. With respect, Ambassador, Professor Krelzak replied, we are not synthesizing the compound. It occurs naturally on Earth where it is considered a harmless food additive. Ambassador Thela's silver eyes narrowed. That fact alone is troubling. If humans can safely handle substances lethal to other species, it raises security concerns. Zach stepped forward. Ambassador, we're not looking to weaponize cinnamon. We're exploring its potential medical benefits. Noble intentions, Mr. Daniels, Ambassador Thela said coolly, but the road to catastrophe is often paved with them. The Council has voted to place restrictions on this research until a full review can be conducted. Professor Krelzak's color darkened. Ambassador, such restrictions would significantly impede scientific progress. We stand to learn the decision is made, Professor, Ambassador Thela interrupted. Earth's representative on the Council was outvoted. Until further notice, all cinnamon and its derivatives are to be secured and research suspended. After Ambassador Thela departed, the atmosphere in the lab grew tense. This is politics interfering with science, Professor Krelzak fumed, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid speech. The potential benefits outweigh the risks. Zach was troubled by the ambassador's reaction. She seemed almost afraid of the discovery. With good reason, Professor Krelzak admitted, consider the balance of power in the galaxy. Most advanced species share certain biological vulnerabilities, Cinnamaldehyde X being one of them. The knowledge that humans are immune, coupled with your planet's vast supply of the substance, introduces an unpredictable variable. But we wouldn't, history suggests otherwise, Professor Krelzak said gently. Every species has used their natural advantages at some point. The Arcturians' resistance to radiation made them formidable in the quantum wars. The vegans' ability to process silicon allowed them to colonize worlds others couldn't approach. Zach frowned. So the Council isn't just concerned about the science, they're worried about humans having an advantage. A previously unknown advantage, Professor Krelzak clarified. Suddenly, Earth isn't just the newest member of the galactic community, it's a planet full of beings naturally immune to one of the most feared toxins in known space. The implications hung heavily in the air. Zach had never considered cinnamon something so ordinary, so mundane could become a diplomatic flashpoint. That night, unable to sleep, Zach found himself in the Academy's botanical garden. To his surprise, Professor Krelzak was there too, observing Earth plants from behind a protective shield. "Student Daniels," the professor acknowledged. "I was just studying your planet's remarkable flora." "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Zach sat on a bench nearby. "Centaurians require less rest than humans," Professor Krelzak explained. "But yes, my mind is troubled about the Council's decision." "Partially," Professor Krelzak adjusted his viewing shield, "but also about the broader implications. Throughout my career, I have advocated for interspecies cooperation in science. This situation tests those principles." "How so?" "Knowledge that benefits one species but potentially endangers others creates ethical dilemmas. Should we pursue research that could heal millions of humans if it might also create a biological weapon against non-humans?" Zach considered this. "But isn't that true of all scientific research? Nuclear energy can power cities or destroy them." "Indeed." Professor Krelzak's color lightened slightly approval. "The question becomes one of trust. Does the galactic community trust humanity with this knowledge? Do you?" Zach asked directly. Professor Krelzak was silent for a long moment. "I trust you, Student Daniels, but I have studied Earth's history. Your species has a complex relationship with power." Before Zach could respond, his communication device buzzed. It was Director Harrington, his voice urgent. "Zach, get to the lab immediately. There's been a breach." The laboratory had been ransacked. Equipment lay shattered on the floor, data terminals had been forcibly accessed, and most alarmingly, the secure storage unit containing the cinnamon samples was empty. "This happened 20 minutes ago," Director Harrington explained, reviewing the security footage. "The system was bypassed using high-level access codes. On the screen, a shadowy figure moved efficiently through the lab, gathering samples and downloading data. Can you identify them?" Zach asked. "Not yet," Harrington said grimly, "but the access codes used are only available to Council representatives." Professor Krelzak's color paled dramatically. "Ambassador Thella, we can't make accusations without proof," Harrington cautioned. "But this is clearly an attempt to control information about the cinnamon discovery. Or to weaponize it," Professor Krelzak added quietly. Zach looked confused. "But if most species are vulnerable to cinnamon, why steal it? That would be like stealing something that could kill you." "Not to study it," Professor Krelzak explained, "but to understand how humans process it without harm. That knowledge could lead to treatments or countermeasures. Or," Harrington said darkly, "to understand if the immunity could be replicated in other species. Imagine if one faction developed protection against a substance lethal to their rivals." The implications were disturbing. What had begun as an innocent misunderstanding had escalated into potential interstellar espionage. "We need to report this to Earth's Council representative," Harrington decided, "and secure any remaining research data." "There's something else," Professor Krelzak said, moving to a terminal that was still functional. "Before the breach, I was running a new analysis on Student Daniel's blood samples. The results are unexpected." The screen displayed a complex molecular diagram that meant little to Zach. "It appears that human immunity to Cinnamaldehyde X isn't universal," Professor Krelzak explained. "Student Daniels possesses a specific genetic marker that allows his body to process the compound safely. It's present in approximately 68% of humans, according to genetic databases." "So some humans are vulnerable to cinnamon?" Harrington asked. "Not exactly. Those without the marker might experience mild irritation or allergic reactions, not the fatal neurotoxic effect seen in other species. But this discovery changes our understanding significantly." Zach processed this information. "So it's not that humans as a species are immune. It's that most of us have this specific genetic trait." "Correct. And such a trait could potentially be isolated, studied, and perhaps even transferred to other species through advanced genetic engineering. Making them immune too," Zach realized. "Which would be incredibly valuable," Harrington added. "No wonder someone stole the research." Professor Krelzak's communicator chirped with an incoming message. His expression grew grave as he read it. The Galactic Science Council has called an emergency session. Earth's handling of Cinnamaldehyde X has been classified as a potential breach of the Proxima Accords. They're demanding all research and natural sources of the compound be placed under Council control. That's absurd, Harrington protested. They can't demand we control a naturally occurring substance on our planet. They can try, Professor Krelzak said, and they have the collective might of 17 advanced civilizations behind them. The situation was escalating faster than any of them had anticipated. What had begun in a classroom with a simple misunderstanding was now threatening Earth standing in the galactic community. 3 days later, Zach found himself in an unprecedented position testifying before the Galactic Science Council itself. The enormous chamber, located on the neutral space station orbiting Jupiter, housed representatives from all member species. At the center, seated at a semicircular table, were the 9 High Counselors. Ambassador Thella, now revealed as the High Counselor for the Arcturian Confederation, led the questioning. "Mr. Daniels," she began, her silver eyes fixed on him, "please explain to the Council how you came to reveal the presence of Cinnamaldehyde X on Earth." Zach took a deep breath. "I recognized it as cinnamon, a common spice on Earth used in cooking. I had no idea it was considered dangerous to other species. And you consumed it in the presence of non-human students, despite Professor Krelzak's warnings. I didn't understand the warning applied to cinnamon. To me, it was like being told water was deadly." High Counselor Drax, a massive reptilian being, leaned forward. "The issue before us is not merely one of cultural misunderstanding. Earth has, perhaps unwittingly, been harboring a substance restricted under galactic law." "With respect, Counselor," Earth's representative countered, "the Proxima Accords specifically refer to synthesized Cinnamaldehyde X, not its natural form. Earth joined the Council after these accords were established and was never informed that a common spice violated pre-existing regulations." The debate continued for hours, with legal and scientific arguments from both sides. Professor Krelzak testified about the research findings, emphasizing the genetic basis for human immunity. During a recess, Zach approached Professor Krelzak in the waiting area. "This is getting serious. They're talking about quarantining Earth, an extreme measure unlikely to pass," Professor Krelzak assured him. "But the Council is genuinely concerned, not just about cinnamon itself, but about what else Earth might harbor that could threaten other species. Or benefit them," Zach pointed out. "The genetic marker you discovered could help develop protections for everyone." Professor Krelzak's color shifted thoughtfully. "Indeed, which brings me to a theory about our mysterious thief." Before he could elaborate, they were called back into the chamber. Ambassador Thella had taken the floor again. "The Council has reached a decision," she announced. "Earth will not be held in violation of the Proxima Accords as we acknowledge the lack of proper notification. However, all research involving Cinnamaldehyde X will henceforth be conducted under strict Council supervision at designated facilities." Earth's representative looked relieved, if not entirely satisfied. The compromise allowed research to continue while maintaining Council oversight. "Furthermore," Ambassador Thella continued, "in light of recent developments, the Council proposes the establishment of an interspecies biochemical compatibility initiative. This program would systematically study substances across member worlds to prevent future incidents and develop new medical applications." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. It was a constructive response to what could have been a diplomatic crisis. As the session concluded, Professor Krelzak approached Ambassador Thella. Zach, standing nearby, couldn't hear their exchange, but the professor's posture was rigid and Thella's expression was guarded. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth, Professor Krelzak explained. "I confronted her about the laboratory breach. She denied involvement, of course, but suggested the act might have been committed by those who saw the medical potential of the research and feared council restrictions would prevent its development. "Do you believe her?" Zach asked. "I believe politics and science make uncomfortable bedfellows," Professor Krelzak replied, "but I also believe the new initiative is a positive step. Your common spice may yet benefit the galaxy, Student Daniels." Back at the academy, life gradually returned to normal. The laboratory was restored, and research continued under the watchful eyes of council observers. Professor Krelzak's xenobiology class resumed, though with enhanced safety protocols. 2 months later, Zach was summoned to Professor Krelzak's office. To his surprise, Ambassador Thella was there as well. "Student Daniels," Professor Krelzak greeted him, "the ambassador has a proposition for you." Thella rose gracefully. "Mr. Daniels, the Interspecies Biochemical Compatibility Initiative requires human participants, particularly those with your specific genetic marker. The Council is offering research fellowships to qualified individuals willing to contribute to this groundbreaking work." Zach was stunned. "You want me to join a galactic research team? Your unique perspective and biological compatibility make you an ideal candidate," Thella said. "Your accidental discovery has opened new possibilities in interspecies medicine. The genetic marker you possess could be the key to developing treatments for conditions affecting multiple species." "What about my studies here?" Zach asked. "Consider this an extension of your education," Professor Krelzak said, his color bright with enthusiasm. "A rare opportunity to contribute to galactic science. And," Thella added, "to help ensure that what began as a misunderstanding becomes a breakthrough instead of a crisis." The decision wasn't difficult. 3 weeks later, Zach found himself aboard a council research vessel bound for the Rigel system, where the primary facility for the new initiative was located. Professor Krelzak had taken a sabbatical from the academy to lead one of the research teams. "I never imagined my morning coffee would lead to this," Zach remarked as they watched Earth recede from the observation deck. "Science often advances through unexpected discoveries," Professor Krelzak replied. "Fleming discovered penicillin through a contaminated experiment. Röntgen discovered X-rays by accident. And you, Student Daniels, discovered that one species' deadly toxin is another's common spice. I still can't believe cinnamon could have caused an interstellar incident." "It very nearly did," Professor Krelzak acknowledged. "But instead, it has created an opportunity for cooperation. The genetic marker that allows you to safely consume Cinnamaldehyde X may help us develop treatments for neural diseases affecting billions across multiple species." As the ship accelerated to FTL speed, the stars streaked into luminous lines. Zach thought about the journey ahead, not just his own, but humanity's continuing integration into the larger galactic community. "Professor," he said thoughtfully, "do you think there are other substances on Earth that might be similarly useful or dangerous?" "Almost certainly," Professor Krelzak replied. "Your planet evolved in isolation for billions of years, developing unique biochemical pathways. What else might be hidden in your forests, oceans, or even your kitchens? That is what our initiative aims to discover." The idea was both exhilarating and sobering. Earth's entry into galactic society was still in its infancy, and cultural misunderstandings like mistaking a deadly toxin for a common spice were inevitable. But with proper research and cooperation, such differences could become opportunities rather than obstacles. "I have a confession," Professor Krelzak said after a long moment. "The day you identified my sample as cinnamon was the most terrifying and exciting moment of my teaching career. I thought I had accidentally exposed a classroom to a lethal toxin, only to discover a new scientific frontier instead." Zach smiled. "And I just thought you were overreacting to my coffee." Professor Krelzak's color rippled with amusement. "Perhaps we both had much to learn from each other." As the research vessel carried them toward new discoveries, Zach couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited in the intersection of Earth's biodiversity and galactic science. A common spice had already challenged assumptions and opened new possibilities. What else might be hiding in plain sight? 1 year later, the Interspecies Biochemical Compatibility Initiative had cataloged over 3,000 Earth substances with potential medical applications for other species. Cinnamaldehyde X, or cinnamon, as humans still called it, had been developed into a treatment for neural regeneration in species previously thought untreatable. In a laboratory on Rigel Prime, Zach worked alongside scientists from 17 worlds, his once ordinary genetic trait now the template for revolutionary medical treatments. Professor Krelzak had been right. What began as a misunderstanding in a classroom had indeed changed the galaxy. And somewhere in the Centauri system, a young alien student was learning about the curious humans who casually consumed one of the deadliest known neurotoxins with their morning beverages, and in doing so, had inadvertently advanced galactic medicine by centuries. The student raised a hand to ask if the story was true, and the professor, a now famous xenobiologist named Krelzak, assured them it was. Never underestimate, he told his class, the scientific potential of a simple misunderstanding, or, for that matter, a common spice.